It's my pleasure now to introduce Randy McNamara, which we figured out was an Irish name, as I was making a fool out of how to say it. And he's led he's transformed 300,000 people in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, practically everywhere but Antarctica. And his 45 years has impacted training 800 leaders who coach citizens, and those 800 leaders have impacted 100,000 community projects that really affect the quality of people's lives. And working pro bono, he now applies his leadership experience to coaching leaders on environmental issues, geoengineering, renewable energy, and civic activism organizations to end human contributions to global warming and to ensure a livable climate for the future of our humanity and living beings. And he's going to touch a bit on air today, so give it up for Randy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. When I retired 2 years ago, I began to investigate global warming and climate change, and I read 30 books. And they taught me a lot of things, but then I ran across this book, which I'm showing you. It's called What We Think About When We Try Not to Think About Global Warming. And it's by a Norwegian sociologist, psychologist, economist named Per Espen Stoknes. And it transformed my entire life. And for me, transformed means you have a whole new realm of possibility, and you see things differently and you act differently. So this book has 3 parts to it. The first part is entitled Thinking, and what he uses is cognitive science, cognitive psychology, behavioral psychology, and social psychology to illuminate for you why the way we communicate about global warming and climate change often doesn't work and in fact produces the reverse of what we want. The second part of the book is called Think Doing, and he provides a whole new menu of possibilities that allow all people to be included and take action. And the third part of the book is called Being, and it's all about the beingness of air. And when I read this, one of the ways I teach myself is I read things out loud. And when I read this out loud to myself, it altered everything. So I'm going to share this with you by reading it out loud to you. I'm going to put it on the screen. First of all, can I show you this one picture? Oh, I have to do click the next picture. Where's the clicker? Yeah. First of all, you and I live in this jar. So I want you all to take a deep breath and exhale. However, next slide. We live in a trance. We're in a half-conscious state characterized by an absence of response to external stimuli. And what I want to share with you today will allow us to get out of the trance. Next slide, thanks. Too focused on our daily busyness, the thinking and doing parts of our lives, we've grown oblivious to the air, how we condition it, how we breathe it, and also how the air breathes us. As philosopher and author David Abrams says, what is climate change if not a failure to respect or even to notice the elemental medium in which we're immersed? Is not global warming, or rather global weirding, or even global burning, an unintended consequence of taking the air for granted? Tackling this spreading crisis is about technical, economical, political, and strategic considerations for sure. More fundamentally, we also need to deepen our view into being, beauty, ethics, and aesthetics. With the frantic tilts and sways of global weirding at hand, we will be forced and humbled into rethinking humanity's relationship with more than human nature and with the wild air itself. In the climate crisis, the air is making itself felt, troubling us, and thus increasingly coming to our attention again. Only occasionally, when the foul local smells of untreated pipe emissions from a large plant, the stench of city sewage, dust storms, or the smog of a great city attacks our eyes and noses, do we suffer the air's condition and turn not to the air itself, but to local technical solutions. Economists turn to the Kuznets curve, a law that says as countries get richer, they eventually start to reduce pollution. This law says they will gradually be able to afford filters that remove the particles, or they'll move polluting industries farther away, or build higher smokestacks that spread the pollution farther. The idea is, use nature to get rich first, deal with the emissions later. But the gaseous emissions that cause global warming are not like the smoke and other particulate matter that becomes what we call air pollution. Greenhouse gases travel much farther than local pollution, with deeper and longer lasting impacts. They spread stealthily and invisibly to become part of air itself. They linger and subtly change our very existence now and for centuries to come. It may be worth taking a step back and asking, what is the air? What is this gaseous bubble that envelops us, this lively system we're a part of? When speaking of the atmosphere in the climate change discourse, we tend to think of it as something out there or up there. We think of it as a mix of molecules. In this mix, there are nitrogen, oxygen, little argon, and now infamous carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, of which there are now too many so-called ppms, they say. This is the primary scientific framing around our climate discourse. The air is a mix of gases, each with certain physical and chemical characteristics. This way of understanding the air arose with the chemical revolution in the Enlightenment period of 1789 to 1830. But to our breathing bodies, the air is much more than just a mix of molecules passively floating around, with energy input from the sun, interacting with ocean and cold space. We have long viewed the air only through the chemical reductionist view. It's now time to consider other ways of seeing, feeling, and relating to the air. First, we can imagine the air as the Earth's skin. The air is amazingly thin compared with the size of the planet and the cosmos it shields us from. Just a fine, flimsy film. The breathable air is only 5 to 7 miles thick, a fragile wrapping around a massive green, blue, and white ball, 7,900 miles in diameter, spinning in near emptiness. On a clear night, we look right through it. The air is far thinner than the skin of an apple when compared with the Earth's diameter. Underneath the air lies ocean and rock, and upon the rock lies a wee bit of soil and greenery. Yet inside of this unsettled, fluctuating film, between a rock and a hard place and a cold place, all of life is protected and nourished. The air stops destructive cosmic rays that would otherwise destroy our skin and our fragile proteins and genes. The air insulates and regulates temperatures in a range that's suitable for water and life. Mediating between blue ocean and black eternity, the air carries all the billions of tons of water in the clouds needed to replenish the soils. The air fills the rivers, stirs the waters, drives the waves and the ocean currents. How can we speak differently about this air? It's not just the climate or the atmosphere or an object out there. Imagine we start from deep, deep outer space and move slowly toward our planet. You could then envision the air as a gradual thickening of nothingness into being. From that startling perspective, the air becomes a mercurial borderland where absolute emptiness transitions into a huge but thick gas bubble hosting a mingling of cosmic plasma with liquid water and solid earth. But where does the air stop? The air is not just out there, far up above us. The air is also inside of us. The air impacts us here and now. The air literally fills my lungs and yours too, from the first breath to the last. The air's elements travel in our blood before returning through the alveoli in our lungs to the outside. The air fills all the pores in our skin, making us semi-permeable. Yet the air isn't just what we breathe into our lungs, briefly visiting us before we exhale it. The air is also our primary link to the world. It fully envelops us from the soles of our feet to each hair on our head, from the day we draw our first breath to beyond our death. The air holds us gently, with a benign embrace, without which our bodies would fall apart. To be born is to enter the air. To be is to be in the air. This generous and stable medium, this invisible context to all of our lives, has, as an integral part of the earthly biosphere, maintained itself in a relatively stable balance over the last 10,000 years, while we've walked around on our two legs, invented agriculture and writing, and expanded our fledgling civilizations exponentially. Before that, the air had sustained favorable conditions for life for about 3.8 billion years. It is into this thin layer of all of modern humanity now is collectively pissing by dumping gigatons of off-gases from ancient carbon through our various combustion devices. We have altered the composition of air without thinking much so far about the outcomes. This vital rethinking and acknowledgement have only hesitatingly begun in the last couple of decades. The air that you are at this very moment breathing in through your nostrils, the air through which you gaze at the words composing this sentence, has been dramatically altered to a composition it has not seen for 3 million years or more. Climate change isn't really distant. Climate change is as close as your nostrils and as close as the gentle brush of a breeze across your cheeks. To be born is to enter the air. To be is to be in the air. And now, inside that context, I invite you to take your first breath inside. To be born is to enter the air, and to be is to be in the air. So take a breath now. And just turn to a person or a couple people around you and just say to them, what does this new context open up for you in dealing with climate change and global warming? Be my guest. Go ahead. Just talk. What does this open up? Okay, thanks. Can I come back with me for a moment? I invite you for the rest of your life to notice the air all the time you're around, particularly as it blows through these beautiful aspen trees and you see the leaves shaking in the breeze. This changed my life, and everywhere I go, I see the air, and I discover the air, and I discover the air, and I discover the air, and I say, oh, there it is again, oh, there it is again, there it is again, and I take a deep breath and celebrate being alive. Thank you. By the way, this book you can get in the, that little library or whatever you call it, bookstore next door. It's for sale. Also available on Amazon. You're welcome.